Yes, your boy Crypto Blood, and welcome to another Kicking It session. Today I've got Jason Williams, not White Chocolate, another Jason Williams, Morgan Creek Digital co-founder. What's going on, bro? Hey, listen, guys, this is the first guest I ever had hit me with his song request before I even asked him. So this lets you know what kind of guy this man is.
I saw Andreas Antonopoulos had his song. Well, he was like a DJ back in the day. I don't think people know that.
They didn't know. I didn't know that
Right.
either. So that was dope. That was dope.
Yep. So yeah, I had to drop some Biggie.
Oh man, why Biggie Smalls, man? Why Biggie? This is a nice song too. I like this one. Takes me back.
No, I'll tell you, and this may seem like totally ridiculous, but a lot of the things that I hold like dear in terms of principles, I learned from rap music.
Really?
I'm telling you, it's like wild.
So who's your favorite rap artist? Who would be your favorite rap artist?
I love Wu-Tang Clan, so it's hard to pick one. So ODB, Method Man, The Genius, The RZA, Jizza. I love Capadonna. I love Biggie.
Yeah.
I'm not really into Tupac that much.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was gonna ask.
He caught me. That's right.
Yeah, I'm a Tupac fan, man. I'm an 80s baby, but really a 90s baby. Like I grew up in the 90s. I was born in the 80s, but I grew up in the 90s era of rap. And man, Tupac, for whatever reason, just caught me, man. I don't know. He was a genius, man. He had a real big voice.
Tupac's a poet. I mean, genius, amazing actor, really deep guy. It was just, I liked Snoop a little bit.
Yeah.
But I would much rather listen to Mobb Deep and Nas and
I hear you, man. Everyone's got their flavor, and I know a lot of people, and I'm really closer to the East Coast. I'm here in Detroit, so a lot of people like the East Coast rap, definitely more than West Coast. So again, thanks for coming on, man. I really appreciate it. I want to take the time just to kind of pick your brain. You've done a lot of things, extraordinary individual, and I thought I would have a great conversation with you. So I guess we can start. I don't know where you want to start, man. Tell us a little bit about yourself. You're kind of in the medical background, right? Is that kind of how you got started with things?
Yeah, so I'm a physician assistant, or practiced as a physician assistant, trained at Womack Army Medical Center out in Fayetteville, North Carolina. After that, got accepted to Yale. And while I was there, came up with an idea for ambulatory care centers that would do 80% of what you'd find in a US-based emergency department, using nurse practitioners or PAs as part of a multidisciplinary health team to treat non-life-threatening care. And that was the beginning of a company called FastMed. And over the last 14, 15 years, 20 years, built that into the nation's second largest urgent care and primary care practice. Really, really great company. Ended up selling it in 2015 to a Boston-based private equity firm called Abry Partners for about $500 million. Mm-hmm. After that, I retired from the practice of healthcare and started working with Anthony Pompliano on an early stage venture fund called Full Tilt Capital. And Pomp and I, we had about 18 million of AUM at that time. We invested it into 63 companies. Some late stage pre-IPO stuff like Lyft, Reddit, Airbnb, and SpaceX. Some of those companies are facing some, I was just going to say though, some of them are facing some real challenges. So when you look at Lyft and Airbnb at this point, they're facing these kind of COVID-19, the economy shutdown has been challenging for them and their executive teams.
Let me ask you this,
beyond
though.
that,
I thought like for example with Lyft is public or Uber. Which one went public already?
So Lyft did.
Lyft did.
So we invested at about a $7 billion valuation when it was still private.
Right. So you made money off that, right? You made a boatload of money off that one.
Well, not a boatload. So when you invest in those markets, sometimes you have lockup periods. So we probably bought that stock at a basis of around $32.
Okay.
And as you know, it went through the IPO, went up about $80, but we were locked up we were locked up for 6 months
Gotcha.
post IPO. So we did fine. We did fine with the investment, but they're tricky. They're tricky things. So I'm out of the lift position at this point, but now we're still holding Airbnb. And Airbnb
That's a
was supposed
tough
to
one,
go.
isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, look, Airbnb was supposed to go public, and now you may have read recently they're firing thousand people or something like that, and
Yeah.
they were sitting on like $1 billion of cash, and
Burn through
that business.
quickly, probably, huh?
Yeah, but that business is interesting. I heard Pomp talking about this today, actually, on his Lunch Money podcast, which I thought was an interesting point. The business model may save Airbnb because, nobody's traveling and nobody's signing up to go into an Airbnb.
But what overhead does Airbnb really have?
That's right. Airbnb doesn't hold any. They're not holding the bag, right? They don't have the inventory. They don't have the real estate. They don't. It may
sound horrible to say that, but they, the people who have to carry the risk are the individuals that own the home.
Yeah. So I really feel bad for those like super Airbnb users, like those that weren't just renting their house, but maybe went out and mortgaged a bunch of properties and they were making good money, but they could be broken pretty bad right now. So it's a tough time. Really tough time.
Really tough time. So you exit from FastMed, successful exit, start your thing with Full Tilt, and how did you meet Pomp? Where did you guys meet?
Yeah, so a friend of ours, a mutual friend that was working for Mark Cuban, actually told me Pomp was leaving Snap. So he had a kind of bad exit. He was only at Snap for under 30 days after he left Facebook, and he was moving back to Raleigh, North Carolina, where I live. Mm-hmm. And so we set up a meeting to grab a beer, and that beer turned into like a 4-hour meeting, and we decided to work together. You just meet people sometimes and you click.
Yep.
I think that's kind of how me and Pomp were, and we've been working together for the last five and a half years now.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I'm always intrigued and want to talk to guys like you because I was me and my business partner were on the other side of that table as far as looking for venture capital back when we were trying to do our startup. And it's just interesting to see and inspirational to see individuals get to the point where they, like with FastMed, you were able to build that up. I think you started out of a post office, right? Or something. Man. You bought a post office. And it's just amazing to see that type of exit happen. And that's great, man. What about crypto? Like, how did you get into crypto? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so when we were doing this early stage venture investment thing at Full Tilt, we noticed a few things happening where a lot of talent was going into the blockchain space and a lot of the pro money was going in that direction. So after we closed the first fund, Full Tilt Capital One, we decided to do a blockchain and crypto specific fund where we'd raise $25 million and invest all that money directly into that space, specifically focused on infrastructure. Mm-hmm. And I had already started a waste to energy company called PRTI. So like late 2015, early 2016, Pomp and I had tinkered around with building a cryptocurrency mine that was fueled off of that waste energy. And I think you're throwing it on the screen. But so we understood mining. After we got the mining going, we started to deal with transactions around Ethereum to Bitcoin. How do you custody it? How do you exchange it? I started looking at altcoins. We started looking at different mining algorithms, hash pools, mining pools. And by the time we finished the first mine and had started thinking about that $25 million fund, we got called by Mark Yusko at Morgan Creek Capital Management, who had also tremendous conviction in the space and was looking to bring in some partners that he could build a business behind. So Mark,
Pomp, and myself. Did Mark know you, or did Mark know Pomp?
Yeah, I think Mark ran into Pomp on Twitter, actually, which is pretty fascinating. Yeah, he was like liking a lot of stuff that Pomp was tweeting back in those days, and I think they just set up a meeting to have coffee. And
that's amazing, man.
Yeah, and then Mark. Yeah, it's wild, right? The power of social media. Yeah. So I think Pete, again, this is kind of a diversion from our discussion, but you've got to keep your game together. And I think making relationships and keeping yourself out there if you're trying to grow something is super important.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you there. So where do you see, I want to jump back to the whole like Wall Street. That was one of the topics I wanted to talk to you about, man. I saw that first rant by Chamath, I think in April or it was earlier, but he was on CNBC going ham. He was going in on Wall Street and these bailouts and how it looks like it's happening again. Like they're getting bailed out before the people. What is your take on the current climate that we see ourselves here in America with this whole COVID thing and how essentially the Treasury has taken over the Federal Reserve and that whole scheme? Give me some of your feedback on that, because I think Chamath really hit it on the head, man.
Yeah, he crushed it. This goes back though. This goes back like I think to 2008 or even before then, where
Sure.
some major companies like Boeing and these companies that are getting bailed out big time right now realize something really important, that they can do pretty highly risky things, stock buybacks, not keep war chests of money to protect their companies, and the government won't let them fail. It literally is too big to fail. So that's what you're seeing right now. And the arrogance of some of these CEOs when they have both hands out, they need billions of dollars to shore up their companies, and they don't want the terms that the government's giving. It was appalling. And I think that's why people like Chamath and others, I think Mark Cuban went hard. They
Yeah,
were
he
like,
sure
this
did.
is
Yeah.
ridiculous. Let these companies fail. They're free market capitalists. But that's different, I think, than letting the pizzerias, the mom and pops, the immigrant-based companies, and that have been kind of shuttered due to the government saying, "Hey, we're quarantining and sheltering in place due to COVID-19, and you have to shut down your business." And a lot of these businesses just got caught cold. And
Yeah,
you look at
I still haven't gotten a PPP loan.
no
And I
PPP
filled it
loan, and
out.
I don't know if you've right. Have you looked for a stimulus check too? I don't know if you've received that or are
No,
eligible
no,
for it,
no.
but
Yeah.
I don't know if a lot of people have gotten that help, and I'm really concerned. I mean, what do we have? 130 to 150 small business employees in the country, or
Mm-hmm.
150 million employed in the country,
Mm-hmm.
58 million small business
What is it going to take
employees.
for America to wake up from this, though, Jason? Like, do you think this time is going to be different? Like, if things don't pan out, if we don't get back, and me personally, people on CNBC talking about V shape, M shape, W shape, all the alphabet letters. How we're going to return from this thing? I personally think, man, it's going to take longer than what most are expecting.
Yeah,
I'm
the
in
month.
Michigan. We've been hit hard. My wife works at a health system. She's in pathology, right? So we're at the ground level. She's telling me stuff all the time about what's going on with this virus. I just think it's more it's people aren't taking it as seriously. And when I say people, public and also investment class individuals, I don't think are taking it as seriously.
No, I think that's a great point. And I think that this particular situation, COVID-19 and the economic effects of this, have hit every industry. You've got, we could talk about how healthcare has been affected in a very
Absolutely.
nuanced way, but this is bad. The money printer's running. The stimulus is going to have to keep coming because we've got over 30 million unemployed here in the United States. A lot of these businesses are not coming back
No.
once the governments turn, people back on. So, hey, get back outside, go back to work. There's going to be no business to go back to work because they just
Right.
didn't make it. They just didn't
Right.
make it. The PPP money wasn't enough. The PPP money didn't come quick enough. And
Yep.
gosh, when I see Mnuchin saying that people can live 10 weeks on
On twelve
$1,200,
hundred dollars.
I mean, put the crack pipe down. I mean, the dude's
Oh
lost it.
man.
He's lost it. His wife's
Totally.
running around in her Louboutins and her,
Totally.
Louis
Yep.
bag. Nobody has any idea about
No,
how far
man.
$1,200 goes.
You're so right. They're so disconnected from reality.
Dude,
It's
I'm getting
just
pissed
so
off right
sad.
now. I'm getting pissed
Yeah.
off. I'm a
Oh, you
little
know
hot.
I am.
All right, I'm just
I'm really pissed, man, because I'm like, this makes no sense. This makes
nah, this is
no
wrong.
sense, man. And it just, to me, this virus has really exposed not just America, but the world, like exposed how ill-equipped and prepared our leaders are, quote unquote leaders, how ill-equipped and prepared our businesses are, how the Fortune 500 companies are not as robust as they seem. You know, you would think they
Yeah,
would be able
look
to.
yeah.
Go ahead, yeah.
Look at how grimy this was
Mm-hmm.
when this popped off in Wuhan.
Yep.
China started to hoard PPE, personal
Yes.
protective equipment,
Yes.
right? And so once the supply chains broke down, and some of that was by China's design, they just literally said, "We're not going to ship N95 masks. You're not going to get,
Yep.
Tyvek suits and all this stuff."
Yep.
And so we're not making them here in the US. We're
Nope.
not making tons of ventilators and the things that we needed during the crisis.
It just
And
completely
lo and
exposes
behold,
us. It just
it,
shows the world in us. And maybe I guess the silver lining is when this is all done, Jason, we can come back stronger. We can bring
yeah,
those manufacturing jobs back home. It's going to cost the cost of goods are going to be higher, but I think a country that builds something, creates something, is a country that has real wealth, and we need to get back to that. We've gotten so far away from that.
such a great point. I mean, all the critical supply chain items will be, repatriated. We won't
Correct.
be relying on anyone to send those. And I don't think other countries will either. I think you'll
Yeah.
have, some percentage of technology transfer. Like if you make a better ventilator, they'll be moved around. But for the
Sure.
most part, I think the United States will come out of this being, more innovative. It'll have new opportunities to create new business lines, and I am hopeful. I haven't lost hope. I just think right now is a really hard place for a lot of Americans and a lot of people all over the world.
Yeah, I want to get back to the point about the health systems. I think, and this is just because my wife works in the health system, and I didn't know this. She's like, well, yeah, we've laid off 4,100 people. I'm like, well, why?
Wow.
She's like, well, most of the revenue comes from elective surgeries and stuff like that. And so a lot of these health systems have shifted over to taking care of COVID patients, and they've had to stop doing elective surgery, so a lot of the revenue is gone. What are you seeing? I know you're not really in that space anymore, but like, are you hearing about this potential crisis coming in the health system?
Well, I always like to qualify that. So I still work for Duke University Medical
Oh, okay.
Center in their
Okay.
innovations in healthcare. So, and I've been in healthcare for 20 something years. So,
Okay.
my perspective is this, and you're exactly right. When COVID-19 became the primary focus, and we went at it at all costs, right? At all costs, at the expense of our economy, at the expense of businesses, everything. We said, we're going to shut down, quarantine, and focus on COVID. The hospital systems did the same thing. So all the dentist office, ophthalmologists, urologists, gastroenterologists, all radiography, laboratory medicine, all of that kind of darkened and shut down or became minimized tremendously. And those are the feeder systems to the big mothership, which is the hospital system, right? Elective surgeries, elective procedures, advanced testing, advanced imaging goes to those laboratories of the hospital. So that all started to collapse down. Okay. Then the hospital said, we're going to shut down segments of the hospital so that we're protected, one, protecting our staff, but two, focused for COVID. So all elective procedures, elective surgeries, peripheral labs, peripheral imaging, all of that stuff shut down. And what the hospital system was left with was a massive decrease in revenue, a massive decrease in patient volume, and something I think that's going to happen post all this, which is a reshaping of how patients engage the medical system. And I'm happy to go deeper into that if that's
Absolutely.
of interest to you.
Oh, absolutely. I did my first telemedicine
I love
doctor
it.
visit
You got it.
2 weeks ago.
You got it. You got it.
It was crazy, man. I was like,
I'm telling you, it's awesome. So one, telehealth care. People were forced, like in a 2-week period, to implement, deploy full scope telemedicine programs. And the government relaxed HIPAA and high tech laws so as to allow that to happen. And what that means is before COVID and before the government relaxed those standards, you had to have an encrypted service web service to do telehealth. So it was a big expense. It was a technology hurdle. A lot of people weren't using it. Wasn't real user friendly. The UI UX sucked for the most part.
Yep.
So it just wasn't adopted very well. But what the government did was said, hey, you can use FaceTime, you can use Skype, and you can do your telehealth. And we're going to pay parity, which means we're going to pay you full freight for that office visit. So it really incentivized doctors to jump in and say, hey, maybe I can drive some revenue. Maybe I can maintain patient care by investing some time and money into this telehealth stuff. And they did just that. Patients, on the other hand, learned this. There's a certain population that's conditioned to go to the emergency room in the event they can't get their primary care physician or need something after hours, nights, or weekends. And that's never been a good system because the emergency room's really not built to take care of time-sensitive, non-life-threatening stuff. The cost could be 10x. It's really inconvenient for the patients. They have to wait a long time because everything that's more acute or more dangerous or more pressing gets prioritized above them. I don't think patients are going to engage that system again like they did before COVID-19. I think they learned the emergency room's dangerous. I can get sick. Mm-hmm. I don't want to wait in that waiting room with a bunch of people who may or may not have a communicable disease that I can catch. And I don't want to pay 10x because I've seen places like urgent cares, places like primary care now that are equipped with telemedicine. They can provide me the services that I need when I need them. And I think there's going to be a lot of service level innovation that comes out of this. And the hospital systems, hospital CEOs, hospital administrators, they better have their games together coming out of this because I don't think the volume's coming back. So they better have their revenue game on.
That's a good point. I agree with you. I don't think the revenue's coming back either. I know they're cutting. They're cutting fund. Go ahead.
Yeah, you got it. Like the payment structures for like these RVU based programs in emergency rooms, they literally pay emergency room physicians more if they order more tests and they produce volume. I mean, that should affect you negatively. Like you should say to yourself, does that make sense? If I go to the emergency room, I have no control, I'm sick, and whatever the doctor orders, whatever the doctor prescribes as my treatment plan, he's getting incentivized to do more and treat more. He's going to get paid more to do that?
It's like if I had to take a car to the mechanic and they do the same thing. It's no good, man. It's not fair.
And by the way, like I don't want to take a shot at the car mechanics, but they kind of do that. Like you're kind of like in a bad spot unless you're like really on top of your automotive repair.
Right.
Like how do you know?
The
guy says, this switch is bad. You need brakes. You need tires. And you're literally like trying to make these decisions, at least with a car, you could say, I don't have the money, so I'm going to have to park that thing. You can't do that with a kidney. You can't do that when your appendix is smoked.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. Didn't think about that. So let me ask you, when you started FitFast, man, how long ago did you start that? What year did you start FastMed?
2001. I was 23.
Okay, so was this, would you attribute the whole urgent care movement to what you did? Because I didn't start seeing urgent cares pop up till maybe 10 years ago. Really, that became popular in my area, at least. I don't know. Were you kind of at the forefront of that?
I would say I was one of the founders of that service model.
Nice.
There was certainly no one that had scale. And again, over that 12-year period, FastMed was the second largest urgent care in the country. Privately owned urgent care in the country. So we grew it pretty big, 1,400 employees, 127 locations. So it was a lot of fun. I was very fortunate to do it with a lot of good people.
Yeah, that's nice, man. That's nice. So I guess we can talk about, I want to get back to cryptos because we didn't really touch too much on that. Where do you see us going forward? I was telling my audience back late 2019, I'm like, look, guys, I'm finally realizing that Bitcoin is a speculative asset. And so with that being said, I'm not too sure how it's going to react if we see a crisis come about in other markets, in traditional equity markets. So then we had that crisis, right? The COVID-19 hit, stock markets They stayed up for a little while, and I was like, why are we going up? And we're seeing these cases on the rise, and yet we're still heading higher in the equities markets. But then it finally kind of priced in a little bit. We had the crash. So did Bitcoin. Bitcoin was kind of a positive correlation with the equities markets, and I think still is to a certain extent. Were you surprised at the correlation, the positive correlation with Bitcoin and equities markets?
Well, how long have you been involved in the space, first of all?
2013.
Wow. And so was your entry into crypto Bitcoin or some other coin?
Bitcoin.
So it was Bitcoin. And
yeah.
are you focused just on Bitcoin, or do you mess around with other stuff?
So when I got into crypto, man, I bought Bitcoin. I was actually reading a Zero Hedge article late at night, and I have a software engineering background. So and I have a passion for finance. So I'm sitting there, I'm listening, I'm looking at the Zero Hedge article. I'm like, dude, what the hell is this? This is like game change. I literally went, Jason, that night. I got up, went to CVS, and sent some money to Charlie Shrim, BitInstant, and funded and got on Mt. Gox and bought my Bitcoin, man. I knew right then this is it. This is it. So
did you get caught in any negative stuff with Mt. Gox?
No. So listen, this is a crazy thing. If people were paying attention, they would have left Mt. Gox, and I was. Mt. Gox started having these delays of like 12 hours, 24-hour delays on your withdrawals. I'm like, what is going on? Like, it normally, if you send a withdrawal request to them, it would be literally like 30 minutes max, an hour max, you would get your money to your external wallet. It was taking 12 hours, 24 hours. And I'm like, this is a little weird. Then the price of Bitcoin on Mt. Gox was, there was a premium to all other exchanges. So I'm like, something is going on here. Why is there a premium on Bitcoin on Mt. Gox? I'm talking about like $300-$200 premium on spot.
It's incredible.
I'm like, I'm getting out of here. So I just moved my funds to I think BTCE at that time back in the day. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so I always tell people, like, it's super early now. You were literally there when there was 12 people.
Yeah, it was play money, man. It was all toy. Yeah. It wasn't serious, man. It just wasn't.
Right. So you're there super early. We are still, like, when I go back
still early. Yeah.
Yeah, when I go back 2016, 2015, 2017, all the things that you saw happen, the run up to 19,000, the drawdown 85% down to 3,100, something like that. We're so early. There was so much speculation. There's a lot of I don't want to curse. A lot of crazy.
Yeah, it's all good.
Yeah, man, a lot of fuckery. I mean, you look at all the wash trading that we've seen, all of the kind of false reporting on exchanges. I mean, all of that stuff is still being worked out as as things evolve. But over time, as the volatility starts to lessen, you're starting to see a more predictable performance from Bitcoin. I do tend to agree with you that I'm surprised by the correlation that Bitcoin has, although it's outperforming.
It's outperforming,
it seems to move a little bit with the market. I was not surprised by what happened recently, as everyone ran for liquidity. Anything they could make liquid, they did. And, Bitcoin is fairly liquid. So I think there was a big sell-off there. But, now I really like the work that Plan B is doing with the stock to flow model.
Yes,
stock to flow X.
Me too.
I tweeted something about that today. I spent some time reading his work, and look, I'm pretty bullish on Bitcoin. I love the work that's happening around the periphery. I'm more likely to look at alt projects than Pomp, probably.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I mean, this is a really interesting space. I think if you have fiat, if you have crypto, I think there's a lot of opportunities to also invest in stable tokens and earn interest on those. But I think right now, there may still be some buying opportunity, but things are going to change in the next 100 days. I think the landscape changes dramatically, and we won't be talking about owning Bitcoin. Most people will be priced out of that market, in my opinion.
Wow. Hope you guys enjoyed the first part of that interview with Jason Williams of Morgan Creek Digital. Make sure you guys like, share, and subscribe if you like these type of interviews. I need your support to continue doing these. Click the link in the description below to get part 2. Holla!